My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. In this episode I'm going to show you how to dismantle these planted containers. These were the pride and joy of the summer colour this year. Lots of fragrance, lots of foliage and lots of flowers. But these plants are valuable to me, they're worth saving, and I'm going to show you how to dismantle a pot and keep the choicest plants. Let's go. This is always a sad part of the year. We've had a wonderful summer, the fall's been great, but the first frosts are coming, and you can't wait to save your tender plants. If you do, they'll get frosted and they'll get damaged. So this container was planted with 4 plants, and you'll hear more about those in a moment. But these are all choice plants that are worth saving. None of them are worth throwing out. But the only way to do that is to be very aggressive, and having a cart to physically move the pot out of your garden into an area where you can properly look it over, I think is the best way. You see here I've got my table set up, I've got a range of different pot sizes, and I've also got some growing mix. And the first thing is you have to be ruthless. You've got to get in there and prune it back really hard, so that you can see what you've got. Don't be sentimental. Be tough, be ruthless, and let's see what's grown. This container performed incredibly well. Lots of colour, flower, and fragrance. I've got to cut it back now so I can see what I've got. This is a plant called Growellia. This is Lysianthus with a nice blue flower. Here's my Tibucina, and back here is an Agapanthus. This plant arrangement grew so well that this Agapanthus got shaded and it never flowered. This is the most choice plant in this container, so I've got to fix that. So I'm going to cut everything back, I can see what I've got, and then start to cut plants out and pop them on, and see what I've got. If there's one tip I can give you when it comes to dismantling a planted container, and that is be ruthless. Now, the goal here is not to damage the plant, or damage the trunk or the roots, but it is absolutely to prune back all that excessive growth. Don't fall in love with it and try and keep these plants substantial and physically large. Say goodbye to these beautiful flowers now so that you can get them to grow for you next year. Now, I've deliberately not watered this for quite a few days now. When it's been hot, I've given it a little bit of water, but not much. That makes it so much easier to handle. I like to think that this planted container was quite sophisticated. Tibucina, Lysianthus, we've got the Growellia and the Agapanthus. But what happens is that one of the plants will do really well, in which case it's the Growellia here, and it will take over. 2 of them did just fine, the Tibucina and Lysianthus, and it was the Agapanthus that suffered. So if you leave this container intact, that Agapanthus will gradually diminish, and essentially it will die out. So although it's hard work, it is absolutely a necessity that you dismantle your containers and get your plants back to health. It's very unceremonious, but that's the Growellia. The task here is to carefully and systematically separate the plants in a manner that means that all of them have got enough roots to grow next year. Now, they probably won't split the way you think, and remember that my choice plant is the Agapanthus, so that's the one that I'm saving until the very end. Now you're bound to break some roots. Don't be too concerned about that. You see I've got a lot here, and I can pop that on and save it for next year. When you start potting on plants, I always use a little bit of garden soil. I mix that with my growing medium, and I have great success with that. But what I want to impress upon you now is that you can't save everything, so you really should pot on those plants that are most precious. In this case, this is the Agapanthus. So we start off with that, and then we work backwards. And what you don't want to do is try and save everything and then not have space for the good plants. Here I am pruning back the Lysianthus. This gets a very severe haircut and root prune. That way I can fit it into a smaller pot and it'll take up less space. I have no doubt that this will thrive and do very well for me next year. There is absolutely no point potting up all of your plants in the biggest pots you've got because you will run out of space. So that's my first pot dismantled, and I'm now getting the next pot. This has got a mix in it that I really had great expectations for. It grew beautifully. This has got the euphorbia and the equisetum, and I featured these plants before. But there's a plant in here called crinum or crinum, and I really had wanted that to flower, and I just don't think it got enough sun. And this is probably a recurring theme in my gardens. They get very full of foliage, and it does block the sunlight. So this plant is going to get dismantled, and as ever, the first thing to do is to give it a really severe prune so you can see what you're dealing with. It is very impractical to think that you can save a lot of the foliage. It will break, it will snap, so you may as well trim it back and get a nice, live, viable crown. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. The foliage is superfluous, it'll get cut off. But I just want a nice big root ball. This is a wonderful plant called crinum. And this is what I want. I want this crown. This is another agapanthus that I need to rescue. As you work through your container removing those most precious plants, and this is that nice beautiful blue agapanthus, you want to start off with the A's, work through the B's, and end up with the C's. This euphorbia is a C. It doesn't matter if I keep it, I probably will do. But I do want to save this second crinum that you see here. Very big root and well worth saving. I'm going to put those in a pot next year that will have a lot more sunshine in hopes that it will flower. Now what I've got left here is the equisetum and another little ground cover. The equisetum looks kind of sad. It's got shaken up, it's lost its composure, but it's probably one of my more valuable plants. And I'm going to save as many scraps as I can. I might end up with 3 or 4 plants. That way I can be sure I have it for next year. I think repotting plants is one of my favorite gardening pastimes. It's a little bit like being in a supermarket with all your favorite ingredients and you get exactly what you want. Here I am potting up that beautiful blue agapanthus. I have high expectations next year that will put out even more flowers. I'm repeating myself, I know, but start off with the A's, then do the B's, and then if you've got space, you do a C. This euphorbia is a C, but it grew so beautifully for me this year, it's difficult to throw it out. This is that rather special equisetum, and I want to save as many as I can, and here's another reason for having a whole range of different pot sizes. All your plants grow at a different rate, and you don't want to unnecessarily be planting in large pots. So this equisetum gets cut back, and I'll have 3 or 4 of these, and that way I can be sure that I have a number of plants that will come through the winter ready for next year. This is the crinum or crinum. These will get put into a nice sunny location next year, and I can't wait for the flowers to come. And don't be afraid to give them a prune back. That foliage, if it's left too long and lanky in the winter, it can start to deteriorate. So giving it a bit of a prune, keeping it on very slightly the dry side, means it will come through the winter beautifully. And all of this is to get me ready and raring to go for next summer. So this is the sadness that is fall and autumn. Plants get split up and divided, but it's all ready for next year. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends. Bye for now.